So hey guys, today I'm going to be making a versus video, and the movies that'll be competing in it are Spider-Man, Spider-Man Homecoming, and The Amazing Spider-Man. So let's get started. So for the story of Spider-Man is I'm going to be focusing on the motivation for Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man. So Peter Parker's motivation in here is the death of his Uncle Ben. So Uncle Ben is a fun person for Peter, and one day he dies naturally. It wasn't explained in the movie, but he does die. And if Peter could have prevented it if he just stopped that robber dude in the wrestling place. And it's not just that his uncle died. Oh, that would already have an emotional effect on him. It's that it's his fault in a way that he died. Like he could have prevented it, but because for selfish reasons, but you can understand, for selfish reasons he didn't. And that you can understand that not just my uncle's dead. It's that I could have prevented it. Drives him to become Spider-Man, and that's a great motivation, and that's pretty much Peter Parker's motivation everywhere. So yeah. For this movie, it skips the origin story, Peter getting bit by a spider, all that stuff, even Uncle Ben's death. And this is the movie where we were supposed to see the Peter deal with his uncle's death, but not showing his uncle dying. Because after happening 2 times, the third time would be ridiculous. So they do that. Thing is, it's just they barely even mention him, and his motivation for becoming Spider-Man is just well, he wants to impress Mr. Stark, and he wants to become an Avenger, pretty much. That's his motivation. It sucks. If it was a normal movie, it would have been great, but as Spider-Man, it sucks. For The Amazing Spider-Man, it's good. It's pretty much Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, except the way Uncle Ben dies pisses me off by a long shot. So just take this. Uncle Ben killed himself. The robber was on a run and he wasn't going to shoot Uncle Ben. Only if Uncle Ben came in his way. But you know what he does? He just takes the gun. But if you slow it down and zoom in, you'll actually see that in the acting process, whoever played Uncle Ben actually clicked the trigger. Even though it's a fake gun and they put in sound effects, in the movie they didn't fix it. So that means Uncle Ben's death is stupid. And also, I just don't like this Uncle Ben. He's like a meanie in a way. So overall, but still, the Amazing Spider-Man, he has a solid motivation, and Peter couldn't have prevented it, but it was still his fault for leaving in a way. And Uncle Ben came to find him, so that's a good thing. So the movie with the far superior story is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, followed by The Amazing Spider-Man, and finally Spider-Man Homecoming. So for Peter Parker in the original Spider-Man, he's nerdy, he's an outcast, he's a loser. Just look at him and you'll be like, yep, this kid is an idiotic dork. He doesn't stand a chance to be a normal kid. But when he gets bit by the spider, he becomes much more cooler. Not like a cool, but much better. He actually doesn't feel so dorky and nerdy, even with his glasses on. He doesn't feel so wimpy. He feels stronger, more mature, and people actually respect him more. And this is who Peter Parker should be at the beginning, a nerdy little idiot, to pretty much a more or less just a normal kid who's mature when he needs to be and funny when he needs to be. And this is perfect. For Tom Holland, I think Tom Holland is a perfect actor for Spider-Man. But the thing is, him as Peter Parker is not his acting, but the way he was written is terrible. He is not Peter Parker. He doesn't feel mature. He just feels the entire movie just makes him a jokester. All he does is say bunches of jokes. He doesn't have that serious tone, except the end of the movie. The first 2 acts are pretty bad in ways of performing Peter Parker. He's just funny. He does mistakes all along, and I get he learns his mistakes in the ending, but he doesn't learn from his mistakes. He learns from losing the suit, and he doesn't learn from his like. I don't think you'll get what I'm meaning, but the mistakes he made are stupid, and he's annoying. He just makes random mistakes everywhere, and it's the lack of a good motivation also deprives his character. Andrew Garfield, I think, is a good Peter Parker, but not great, but still good. He's nerdy. He's pretty much who Tobey Maguire is. except he doesn't look like a nerdy little idiot. He's treated nerdily, and when he gets bit by the spider, he actually becomes more mature and all, but he doesn't feel so nerdy at the beginning. He doesn't feel like an outcast like Mark Webb described him. Like he feels like he just doesn't look like it. So the superior Peter Parker is Sam Raimi's, followed by Tom Holland, and then Andrew Garfield. As a Spider-Man, I think that Tobey Maguire is great. He's fun, humorous, super funny, doesn't treat people. He's not as playful as Spider-Man, but it's pretty easy to get around since then. He and also, I don't think he's as humorous as Spider-Man is. He feels a little darker, like not more serious, which is something I'm not the biggest fan of. But overall, you could forgive it pretty easily. As for Tom Holland's, I think he's bad, and also Tobey Maguire also has a lot of consequences on his shoulder. But the thing is, Tom Holland is bad. He's a good actor, but what they did is bad. He deprives himself of any consequences except losing the suit. Another thing is, he's just not Spider-Man. He's annoying. He captivates a bunch of random people who didn't do anything wrong. And it's not like he learns from it at the end. At the end, he just learns from one thing. He has to be himself. That's what he learned, which is great. But he's not learning the main thing. And then Andrew Garfield, Um, I loved him. I thought he was a perfect Spider-Man. The way he treats people, like in Max in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, is classic Spider-Man. Like the way he dressed Max up is perfect. And then I love his suit, which helps it too, and stuff like that. And he's also serious when he needs to be. He's not as serious as Tobey Maguire, but I think that Tobey Maguire's a little too serious. And also, he's just really humorous. Mr. Andrew Garfield. So the first place goes to the Amazing Spider-Man, followed by Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man: Homecoming. The suit, I think Tobey Maguire's suit is good. Okay, I like the dark design, except for me, it looks dull. The red doesn't look that good. It looks good, but it doesn't look dark. It's like in the middle. Like it should be a little lighter or way darker. And same thing with the blue. It looks way too dark. I think it should be a little lighter. Tom Holland, I like the look, except it just looks way too light. It's not like the medium in the middle thing. Just way, way too light. And it just doesn't work that way as Tom Holland's Peter Parker. That's not how it's supposed to be. It shouldn't look fake. It should look real. That's the problem with the suit. And Andrew Garfield, I love it. I think the blue is the perfect color. It's a little lighter than Andrew Garfield's. It's also brighter. The red is a little lighter too, and it's perfect. And I love those eyes. And that's also in the silver part that I love. So first place is Andrew Garfield, followed by the Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man: Homecoming. As a relationship, I think MJ and Peters is fine, not bad by any chance in this movie. But MJ feels more or less like an outcast, like a person who had two boyfriends, Harry and the other kid, Flash. But those people just, in my eyes, don't understand her. But after she sees Peter is the first person who understands her, and that's what's so pretty decent about the relationship in this movie. Tom Holland and Liz, I just thought it was normal. They have no chemistry, no nothing, but it's not bad by any stretch. And also, I just don't fully like MJ and Peter in Spider-Man, but it's still not bad. And the Amazing Spider-Man, I really thought Gwen and Peter had some really good chemistry, and Emma Stone was a pretty really good Gwen actually. But the problem is their relationship. It was developed well and everything. It just feels it wasn't given as much time as it should have. So first place comes for the Amazing Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man: Homecoming, followed pretty closely by Spider-Man, the original. As a villain for the Green Goblin War, he has solid motivation. He's humorous. He is super funny. I absolutely loved the ending when he was holding Mary Jane and a box of children, and that speech he said was classic, like classic humor and Spider-Man speech, and it was amazing. He has a dull design, but he's so memorable. And he's so hilarious. Like, I can recall almost all his big lines he said. It's literally still in my brain. I love the Vulture too. He's a great villain. He's not a mastermind. He was the first good Marvel villain, in my opinion. He wasn't, except Loki. He wasn't a mastermind. He was just a person trying to help his family from the mess the Avengers made. But I was weaked out by it was the Avengers. It was the Avengers, and his motivation was Tony Stark. That thing I was annoyed by. But he is an awesome villain. And when he was in the car with Peter and threatened him, that scene was just awesome. I absolutely loved it. But coming for Andrew Garfield, though, I hate the lizard, period. At first, when he was Dr. Cars, he had great motivations, and he felt like a villain. But after that, he just became boring and just lame. And we weren't even fully explained why he wanted to become the lizard even more after he became the lizard. So coming in first place is the Vulture, and followed by the original Spider-Man, and finally the Amazing Spider-Man. Action in Spider-Man, it's good, but it's not great because it's very outdated. Like, it's a very old movie. But the thing is, they're memorable, super memorable. They're unique. They have great pacing and cuts. It's just that for the time they were fantastic, but they don't hold up as well. But they're still fun to watch. Spider-Man Homecoming are not fast paced, feel very bland to me, and also it's just them punching each other for the most part. And his web shooters, they run out a lot, even though it's realistic still. So I like the action, but I don't love it. And for the Amazing Spider-Man, it's fast paced, greatly used, and it's just perfect. And it also shows his web ability better than both of the other movies. The problem is, it's just except the school fight, the location of every other fight scene is pretty bland and lame. The location, like the settings. So, in first place is Maguire's Spider-Man, followed by Andrew Garfield, and then Tom Holland's. As a means of a soundtrack, this one was composed by Danny Elfman, and boy is it good. It is fantastic. It's emotional, serious, and humorous. It's kind of funny to think it's humorous, but still, it is. So it's a great. And here it's dull. I don't have any idea who it's composed by, but it's dull. It doesn't take too many points away from the movie. And Far From Home, it's improved a lot. But here it's just dull and, in my personal opinion, really freaking bad. The Amazing Spider-Man, I don't know who it's composed by, but it is amazing. It's weird in at first. The soundtrack is weird, but it's like heroic. That's what I love about it. Every song feels like it's meant to be in that scene. In Tobey Maguire's, it feels a little out of place sometimes. But in his, it's perfectly cast in the scene. As much as I love Tobey's music, I think this music is worse. But the placement is just absolute perfection. But it does have a few problems. I'm not going to say it's perfect. So at first place goes to Spider-Man, then the Amazing Spider-Man, and finally Spider-Man Homecoming. As a simplistic ending, I didn't really love the first Spider-Man ending. For me, it felt way too rushed, and I just didn't like the final battle was fine, and then I just wanted there to be a little more of a final battle. But the main thing, I just don't like Tobey Maguire's speech at the end. It's a personal preference thing. And also, I think the ending is just a little too rushed. Not the entire third act, just like the main ending. For Spider-Man Homecoming, it's the entire third act to be the end. But here, the main ending, I'm just not a big fan. I don't hate it at all. I actually really like it. Just I'm not the biggest fan of it. Spider-Man Homecoming is good. It's fantastic. Peter losing the suit gives him a new empathy, realizing the suit isn't everything. And that drives him. And then for the Amazing Spider-Man, it's pretty rushed. That's the problem. Everything else is great. So first place is Spider-Man Homecoming, followed by the Amazing Spider-Man, and finally Spider-Man, the original. So the first Spider-Man movie gets a 10 out of 10. Spider-Man Homecoming gets a 5, in my personal opinion, and the Amazing Spider-Man gets a 7.5 out of 10. And just saying, this is my very own opinion.